No, Jason, we cannot call them just PS this week. We're going to say their full name. All right? People gonna learn how to say that team's name. We'll get to it in just a second. Welcome back, everybody. We are third Deadlock Fight Night. We're kicking things off here with EU. And of course, very quickly, for those wondering what the heck this is our third crack at it. I'm Mitch Leslie, by the way. That's Jason Kaplan. If you're not familiar with us, we love talking about video games and skirting a fine line between being funny and being fireable. But we are here to basically celebrate the top teams in EU and NA in Deadlock now at this very early stage. We're running a King of the Hill format. We got two challenger teams play off against each other in a best of one before going to a best of three against our current King of the Hill. Our current King of the Hill in this region, is Buff Enjoyers, and they have been dominant over the last couple of weeks. Pojilaya Skumbriya, though, Jason, have looked very good, been much improved recently, especially in other tournaments, and they're going up against a blast from the past.
Yeah, man, it's been 8 years since we actually got to cast Mydong back in the day with Tvik and Too Good back in Overwatch. But I'm really happy to see, Tvik and Co back. I did get confirmation, by the way, that Onabi on their team actually is the brother of Soon, who you might recognize from Overwatch or from Valorant. But both these two teams, they played against Buff Enjoyers, Mydong just a few days ago when unfortunately they did lose 2-0, and Pojilaya Skumbriya did actually beat Buff Enjoyers in a best of 3 as well. So if there's any hope of anyone taking down our champion, I think it might come today. But I will say this though, Mitch, Buff Enjoyers to me is probably the best team in EU and NA, hands down. I'm not gonna say the world because we always know what Korea and China can bring to the table when it comes to any esport, but their macro play is on point, and I want to see a team challenge them. I want to see a team beat them, but more importantly, I want to see a team push them to the point where they have to continually improve if they want to stay on top.
Absolutely. That's the most fun thing to watch, I think, is this churn between our top teams in these regions. And Mydong as well. It's a question of whether they're up to the challenge here. We've actually seen them perform pretty well in some recent, I think Deadlock Core it was, actually made it to the final, end up losing 2-0 to Buff Enjoy. So they're in the mix. But very quickly, before we jump in, I want to give a huge shout out to this week's sponsor of the show. Deadlock Fight Night is brought to you this week by Triumph Arcade. Triumph Arcade is a place where you can partake in skill-based arcade style games against other users and win real cash. They paid out over $25 million in the last year. So sign up now and you can double your deposit up to $100. The easiest way to make money playing games, if that's what you're all into as competitive gamers. It's skill-based, so put yourself to the test. Triumph Arcade, go to triumph.gg to check it out. And of course, from us, a big thank you to them for coming on board and allowing us to fund this, to give the teams a real reason to play for some fantastic cash at this very early stage in Deadlock's life. So let's jump in and talk about this matchup a little bit more, because Pojilaya Skumbriya, the first time we saw them, not only were they hard to pronounce, it was also hard to see, how they were going to take down the likes of Buff Enjoys, and they did struggle there, but they've looked much improved lately. This Mydong team, I need to ask you something. Did you tell Tvik to name his team that?
No, I didn't. It was just a pleasant surprise. I'll say, Mitch. I don't know. I think we both know Kevin quite well. I think it's a name that definitely fits the kind of team he brings up. But to kind of bring it back to these two teams in particular, I feel like you have two different teams, because you have Pojilaya Skumbriya, who's kind of been around for a while. They've been tested. They played against all the top teams. They played multiple events consistently. They have the experience. They have the synergy worked out. Whereas Mydong on the other side, they came together like a week and a half, 2 weeks ago, and they have a lot of players on the team who don't have a lot of competitive experience, like a big competitive background. And I feel like that's where Mydong is going to falter. However, I will say this: Tvik leading the team, not to raise him up too much. He's a very smart player. Yeah, of course. Very smart player. He knows what he's doing. He knows that when he chooses the team he wants to play with, he's going to be very certain of this team. And they showed a lot of promise. Like in the Deadlock Core tournament you're just mentioning, they ran it back in the lower bracket after losing the first round in the upper bracket. Ran it all the way to the finals to play against Buff Enjoyers, and they did lose 2-0, but they showed they could contend against Buff Enjoyers in the laning phase. They didn't let Buff Enjoyers run away with the game in the beginning. So that's like one really good sign for me in my eyes about this team.
Now, before we jump too much further into the game, we've got someone very special to introduce, of course. One of our mainstays, one of our co-hosts is going to be ZP coming on in. By the way, who achieved a pretty reasonable rank this week in Deadlock, by the way. What was that? What did you manage to get to, mate?
It's random 6, but it's a little bit of a sore point because it's like it's so close to something. Yeah.
I didn't mean to bring it up like that. I was impressed.
No.
You're on that grind, you know what I mean?
Oh,
I'll have to see it. What do you think about this? ZP, you obviously, we were subject, I think, to the hijinks of Tvik and Co. back in the early days of Overwatch. Great to see them back here, but I don't know, like me and Jason tend to sort of agree that Pojilaya Skumbriya maybe are one of the most rapidly improving EU teams right now.
Yeah, they look great. And I mean, they're, I think, one of the only teams around, period, that has taken Buff and Joyers to task on equal ping and actually taken them out, right? So for them, they're on a revenge tour. They want to go and get that match versus Buff and Joyers and beat them here on Deadlock Fight Night and not just, Fissure Underworld, which is where they got their victory before. However, I just have to say shout outs to both of you for walking into what can best be described as a field of rakes on the ground where you'll be hitting them repeatedly between these two teams, where one team you cannot say without making an innuendo.
Nah,
the other team name you cannot say. The other team name you can't say easily at all.
I mean, for context, there is a video out there of the highlights of casting Mydong in Overwatch, and it was pretty out there. We were not as subtle and as mature and as developed in the frontal cortex as we were back then, ZP. Don't worry, we're going to keep it all about board today. Forget about it. All right, so bans here already. Pojilaya Skumbriya with the pocket ban straight away, and Jason, the Wraith ban for Mydong.
Yeah, so what I'm curious about is with Mydong, I feel like we've seen them play a couple of heroes that were off meta slightly, right? Mo and Krill kind of disappeared off the face of the planet as of recent times, but we did see them actually play Mo and Krill. I believe that was up against Buff and George, if I'm not mistaken. Actually, no, I think it was a match before that, my bad. But one thing we did see it use and play well to was kind of a counter to Yamato. So I'm curious if we're going to have Yamato being played. Zeke, I know we were watching some of the matches discussing this. A pretty hard counter to Yamato.
How's it a hard counter to Yamato?
Because you can't ult when he's ulting you, right? Okay. So you prevent any sort of investment and refresher from being useful, and you can eliminate her extremely quickly while doing that. If you can hard focus her, which is obviously her power, you can stay alive and focus so much damage on you with your ult.
Yeah, taking a look at for me, the thing that's interesting to me is you look at the bans, like just reversing a bit here, is the fact that Wraith getting banned here, when you compare the how as an A, Wraith was being chosen in NA as sort of like, yeah, it can mix in towards the latter end of the draft, whereas EU in both tournament play and this just straight up, no, we're not going to deal with the Wraith, or if we're going to have Wraith, we're going to first pick it. Very different in appeal between the regions. But yeah, Paradox picked early. And also, I wonder if this is going to be followed up with a Lash. Just because, again, you have this trend right now drafting-wise where you almost take the best of a certain role away from a team. And in terms of initiation, teams still like doing Paradox Lash as like a 1-2 combo if they can get it.
Okay.
We've definitely seen like, teams want to bring in as much, engaged potential as possible at times, whether it's just for picks like Paradox is, or, we've seen Wraith do the same thing. Wraith, if she gets ahead, has like 4 actives. She just pops them, telekinesis, and, basically just nukes in one of those individual targets. Also with like Shadow Weave, right? The active item that gives you that stealth there, she just was devastating previously. Shift here, though, picked up, Jason, for PS.
Yeah, I'm kind of curious because I know one player in particular, Mydong, extremely hates playing against a Shiv. It's such a pub stompy kind of hero, and obviously it can get going and it can be very hard to deal with later on in these fights. I don't really know what Mydong want to go with when it comes to like a hybrid carry. Infernus is still open, which I'm kind of surprised to see Infernus not being picked up so far, as we do have, looks like the guys coming in for Mydong. But I'm also curious what kind of supports we're going to see, because you still have Kelvin up. I know we've seen Onibi play Kelvin a ton. I know we still have McGinnis up as well, which is a very strong support these days. What's your thoughts, ZP?
With McGinnis, I definitely think McGinnis is in the cards, just because teams have realized that McGinnis is one of the few heroes in the game that, depending on the terrain, you can use to disengage from fights pretty well. You usually build Rescue Beam on it. McGinnis is also a character where, like, once you're setting up for a fight, it's not always great to like engage in on a McGinnis where you have turrets and wall available. It's a character that gives you a lot of fight control and has options and like still pretty good damage output, right? So McGinnis at the top end has been pretty highly valued and usually picked by one team or another, regardless of region.
Can we talk about Lady Geist very quickly here? That's been picked up by Mydong. ZP, we're seeing a bunch of these builds that involve like building towards that Mystic Reverb, right? Because of how spammable Malice is, that you can get that slow applied, radius really frequently. It seems really oppressive to try and play against this if you're remotely grouped up, even if you're an individual.
Yeah, I mean, Geist right now is sort of doing a whole lot. Not only is Geist sort of anti-dive, where if you go in immediately with something like Yamato, you can get silenced, you can get health swapped if you're a Warden, and the Geist is like prepared. But also just the power of Mystic Reverb is like one of the biggest power spikes in the game right now, because you just start throwing out your Malice, and yeah, everyone's slowed by 40%, and it just continues to go off. It's just the most oppressive spam imaginable. And on top of it, Geist is
damage
still a
amp,
really
huh?
good early laner, like very good.
Also, don't forget about the fact that it's like one of the, I feel like, the few ways you can stop a team from engaging on you or slow them down, and then also vice versa to chase, right? Because the range you're going to eventually get on that is insanely far. So it provides you a lot of like control in these fights, but also she has 100% pick rate so far in the Deadlock Fight Night across these 3 weeks.
Okay, someone's got some stats over there. I'm kind of admiring a little bit. Yeah, I mean, look, we've seen like Lady Geist be like pretty reasonable in a gun build, in a spirit build, but more often we're seeing these hybrid builds picked up where it's like Mystic Shot taken early, right? So you are at least able to scale to some degree off that spirit. And we mentioned a little bit, of course, about like the Headhunter build and stuff like that. So we did end up getting the Lash Paradox here, ZP, but it, that Lash sort of bookended it a little bit later on. But again, it's been picked up by Mydong.
Yeah, the Lash, it's interesting that it fell that far. I mean, again, part of it is like team preference and what they want to play. Mydong's team, I mean, honestly, looking pretty solid. The only thing I look at and sort of wonder a little bit right now is just the engaging could be a little bit more difficult. Like, between the two teams right now, like, Pojilaya Skumbriya is definitely going to be way more aggro in the early and mid game with the composition they picked. And that's also kind of a problem, because if they're successful in getting ahead and a decent amount of that farm goes to the Shiv, well, Shiv is one of the hardest heroes in the game to actually deal with when he gets ahead. So I feel like surviving the early, the mid game for Mydong is going to be the test.
I mean, the thing is, we also have to keep in mind, right, last week or before last week's matches, it was changed where the souls aren't evenly split between the two people in a lane at 8 minutes. So your kind of early game ends a lot sooner. What I'm looking at is, are we going to see a McGinnis Warden lane? Because that is so daunting to go against. You just throw up the binding word, you throw in the wall, and guess what? You're stuck and you're probably going to die.
It's the same as
so
like
kind
the
of
sleep and sort of
exactly
binding word, right?
like you saw last week in NA. So I'm curious, but the thing is, I know Vic in particular plays Warden and he plays Viscous extremely well. I just don't know which one he's gonna be on particular. But the 7 on the other side, that's what I kind of find a little bit interesting. We haven't seen, I feel like, too many 7s. I feel like we don't really see 7 in NA. I feel like we only really see it in the EU, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, that sounds about right. I mean, Seven's sort of been a weird case where he's like one of the most picked heroes, period, regardless of MMR in actually just pubbing the game, right? Or even in ranked. But in competition, he's sort of at times been overshadowed by characters like Wraith and Furnace, Haze. But I think now you're seeing a world where like Haze has not been nearly highly as valued in the high-end comp scene, so now you look for alternatives. Warden is picked on the other side, and Furnace is picked, Wraith is banned. So I think 7 comes in here not because it's, PS's favorite hero in the world, but based on the pool that's remaining, that's kind of one of the only heroes left to sort of fit a role of something that's going to be more carry-based and eat the jungle efficiently.
Yeah, I mean, great point here. Like someone to really funnel a lot of that farm into and get value of it, as 7 can really become a terror later in the game. We're about to head in, folks, to our first match. These are our challenges. Pojilaya Skumbriya versus Mydong for the right to take on Buff Enjoyers for that $1,000 prize here in a Deadlock Fight Night. Number 3 for EU. We've seen the draft. We know what to expect from PS to some degree. We've seen Mydong, very newly formed, start to make some waves. Very quickly, ZP, quick pred from you before we let you go. Who do you think has this?
Fred going in, honestly, I think Mydong is a rising team. I would not underestimate them. However, based on the history between the two teams, than what we've seen in Deadlock so far, I think Pojilaya Skumbriya, great odds of getting that rematch versus Buff Enjoyers.
Thanks, JP. We'll catch up with you in just a second. He's glad he doesn't have to say Pojilaya Skumbriya's name any more times. A bit of a lag here, so we're going to wait on that one. We've game pause here. Zania, of course, is a really consummate Lash aficionado. Really see them basically pick that whenever possible. We actually didn't have Pojilaya Skumbriya last week in EU. Obviously, we sort of invite teams and try and mix it up a little bit there, but they really made quite an impression, I think, in week 1. And now, I mean, we get the chance to, Jason, take their temperature yet again. If they can beat Mydong up against Buff Enjoys, we're always asking this question: is the gap closing? How are these teams progressing respectively?
I like how you kind of brought that up too, because Pojilaya Skumbriya, maybe we would have seen them for like 2-3 more weeks. Who knows? We would actually been able to cast them yet again. And it's nice to be able to take kind of stock of things of how they kind of change week by week or every 2 weeks, you know, whenever we have teams back to see if they become better or not. I think one thing we're going to have to keep in mind, though, when it comes to this matchup is that Mydong, they've had a tendency, obviously being a newer team, to struggle in their solo lanes, to be able to have their solo lanes keep up to their opponents. Yes, they might win the duo lanes, but the solo lanes is what you really need to focus on here. And funny enough, we're actually going to have Geist in a solo lane in lane 4 up against the Lash. And we're having Furnace over in lane 1, which obviously we're going to expect to see him in a solo lane.
Onibi, of course, going to be on the McGinnis here. Already a wall getting thrown up. And in the early game, this is much more to secure some of this these last hits and also give yourself a bit of a window to deny if required. We know that, you know, generally Ivy, not a great laner. So Pojilaya Skumbriya are going to have that to go up against. Of course, this is an Ivy paradox lane.
So what I think we're going to see Mydong do here is they're going to try to shove the lane as much as possible, which I kind of find interesting considering you have so much kill potential, again, with the binding word and the wall. But as you mentioned, with Ivy being so weak, they kind of want to force him to last hit under the turret. And then also not allow Ivy, when Ivy eventually gets the ultimate online, to roam around the map, pick up, you know, the teammate, go gank, or not even pick up the teammate, go by yourself and gank. So by keeping that pressure, it's really easy to keep an eye on where Litz is going to be playing and prevent him from being a real presence in these other lanes.
We have Shiv 7 versus Mirage Viscous, excuse me, in this mid left side lane. That seems pretty decent lane for the Viscous Mirage. They're obviously both have the tendency to be bullies. You notice the bloodletting's not active yet here for Fate. They haven't skilled into that, so all the damage they're taking is up front. None of it will get converted until later. Great little puddle punch here. That's a little bit scary. Svick, though, looking more towards Fate. Looks like that was able to be avoided at least by the 7. Sunset quickly gets out of that.
So what I'm looking at for Pojilaya Skumbriya, though, is the fact is they have kind of like 3 carries. And you're not going to have 3 lanes that you can farm as you get into the mid game when you're starting to group and look for these team fights. So I'm curious, where are they going to put people? I'm assuming they're going to put maybe, I mean, they're going to have to put 7 in a solo lane eventually to soak up some farm and maybe farm 2 of these lanes. Also, as a quick little note here, you're seeing, you know, 7 played by Sunset go back, constantly look for these boxes. Something you're gonna have to keep in mind a ton. When any jungle can't spawn, when any of these boxes spawn, you need to go pick up as quick as possible, which in the 3 lane is gonna be very difficult to do, and they're constantly knocking at that front door.
Absolutely. So you already see a fair bit of pressure being felt by Sunset. We cut to them when they're quite low, trying to go for some of those neutral camps here. That being said, Pojilaya Skumbriya doing fairly well in the farm regard across the map, and Captain actually going down on that mid-right side lane here. So the Ivy paradox combination actually yielding some results early, and this will put Taz even further in the lead. This is a very farmed up lane so far.
Yeah, I mean, you do have 2 stuns with this, obviously. Open up with Paradox, follow up with the Ivy statue as well, and you can get a lot of damage down. Maybe they cut Onibi off without having a spectral wall to actually stop them from engaging that heavily. But what I am worried about, 2K soul lead, only 3 minutes in. And obviously, you know, the kills we just saw kind of go into it, but trying to take stock of where the actual money discrepancies are going to be. Looking at the last lane, they're pretty equal, but looking at the other solo lane, 1.4 for Waldo up against the 1.6 for Together. So yeah, it's mostly coming down to these dual lanes at the moment.
Yeah, this is such an interesting one. Looks like there's a full commit here from Muffin. Soul Siphon really takes Zinnia quite low. They're able to back away though, and they should be able to get out through this pit, but here's the chase and the gun. It's a little bit different for Muffin. Nicely done. The Geist wins out that solo engagement.
Yeah, pretty big too. I wonder if he's going to head towards like some Spirit Light Skill to help sustain in lane. The regen that he got was obviously buffed recently, where it gives you like 3 health per second instead of the old 1, which is massive. We also do see Waldo here on the Infernus, played by Mydong, able to get a kill onto Together. So they went for the gank on the 1 lane, and it come out ahead in this one. So that 2K soul difference we had, Mitch, well, it's gone. Mydong have tied things up.
Yeah, I mean, pretty big that Waldo's able to get, you know, a solo lane. And yeah, to be honest, you know, the Yamato is pretty scary in general, but you've got plenty of mobility through Flame Dash and just playing safe. That Waldo has been able to farm up pretty well, and Together wasn't able to force you know, a positive engagement for Pojilaya Skumbriya. Taz, of course, wants to do a bit of farming. He looks like they're going to rotate over to this 4 lane and try and help out a little bit against Muffin, who's, again, trying to extend that lead in souls and pushing up. Zinnia is only at 2.2 right now, but they've backed off. So a bit of a sixth sense, Muffin, feeling like they were already overextended.
Yeah, it's really important, like as you heard ZP saying, right? Pojilaya Skumbriya is going to have a much stronger early to mid game, even with the Ivy, obviously. So you need to be very aware, and you need to also follow these things. Speaking of ganks, we're going to see a gank on the 4 lane here by Onibi as he comes in, and they get it onto Zinnia as well. So that's massive, because Muffin, he already got a kill onto his counterpart of Zinnia in lane, and now he gets a second. He's got a 1K soul lead. I'm curious if he's going to be able to continue to push this pressure and keep Zinnia behind, so he can't be that effective.
Okay, easy heavy barrage coming out. This is definitely going to try and open things up a little bit for this Warden lane, which has been suffering a little bit. Zinnia spotted out there. Can the Warden escape? That's the question. Onibeed really trying to back away here. Captain is going to be caught. I don't think there's any escaping there. Zinnia able to bring them down. Elsewhere, though, Fate goes down to Crew. That lane just got very, very hectic. And Taz is able to be Onibeed in that 3 lanes here. So Pojilaya Skumbriya should be able to pressure down his Guardian pretty effectively. Twitch is on the run. Looks like he's got now.
Yeah, important for Zinnia, who did rotate in for that kill to get back in lane in time. We're going to see another fight break out here as Warden's trying to back away, and Captain, he doesn't have ultimate online just yet. He's only at 2.8. This is going to be very tough for them to survive.
Very dangerous. Even with the Watchers coming and giving Taz a little bit of extra healing, they are going to be overwhelmed. Good numbers advantage created by Mydong in that lane. Again, a lot of those zipline speed boosts being used to get back into lane as quickly as possible. Waldo just suffered that on the one lane as it was Hardeki, I think, running into that lane after together got picked up to at least take a trade. So very hectic couple of moments, but we are coming out even on souls. But notice that Sunset crucially has a nice number of souls on the Masters Taz.
4.4 on a 7 this early is going to be pretty strong as well. But again, I'm looking towards the 8-minute. In 2 minutes time, we're going to see how they're going to start to transition in towards this middle game. We haven't seen any of the Guardians go down yet either. We can see Tavik here on the high ground trying to gain some information, look for potential gank. However, Together is keeping away from this. He's not trying to go for any sort of fight just now because he realizes I cannot afford to keep dying here in this lane. But we are seeing, it looks like a little bit of a mismatch here in lane 3. This is a 2-on-1.
Yeah, just the Ivy right now. Tavik also rotating to that 2 lane. Muffin goes down. That was a gank on that 4 lane as Taz got involved very quickly. I think very important to keep a lid on that Lady Geist's farm there and also, give your Lash the ability to get to that strong early to mid game that we know they're capable of. Captain, I think he is the ultimate coming out from Ivy. Doesn't want to be dumped on by that bomb. But we get a 3v3 happening in this 3 lane right now. Definitely feel like something's brewing.
Yeah, I'm not sure if Tvik's actually been spotted on the Viscous yet. No, yes, he's definitely going to be spotted here, as you can see on the screen as well. Looks like the first guard of the game will go down. It's going to be in lane 3. The engage not going to be coming in, though, from Mydong to do any sort of work off the back of that. Actually, speaking of that, we do see the goo ball come in. But what is really going to be netted from this is the question.
Well, there's McGinnis wall getting thrown down pretty far out, but it doesn't seem to catch anyone. Zinnia having to back away now, but of course that life drain is going to be a problem from Muffin. Very, very low. Hit by a slowing hex as well by Captain. And Zinnia has to get out. Just hiding for the time being. Surely not. Surely not. No. We spotted him out.
I was going to say, if he gets away with that, just being sneaky beaky in the corner, that'd be extremely impressive. But now that they got that kill, I was expecting to push a Guardian for themselves because we do have 2 Guardians down for Pojilaya Skumbriya. 1 ward till they get their first flex slot unlocked, which again is going to be pretty massive considering they're almost at about 40k souls. We're all going to be used to potentially, if he's a little bit closer, he's going to try to zone them away so they can go for the Guardian. But unfortunately not able to be successful as we do have the counter push coming in on lane 2.
Yeah, the Crew can't do too much in lane 2 either. They really have to back away. Meanwhile, though, Mydong are trying the same thing. So we have that Warden ultimate here used on this Guardian. We are going to see Mydong finally get themselves on the board in terms of those Guardians here. And on this 2 lane, Pojilaya Skumbriya don't really have a ton of pressure on that Guardian. They're probably hoping to get a fight off of this, and you can see everybody drifting over in that direction. This is about to get hectic. Already Together very low.
Yeah, I'm keeping my eyes on mostly Captain here on the Warden until he gets his Majestic Leap. We do see the ultimate being used out of Yamato here. Together trying to stay alive. Does a ton of damage back. You can see immediately Captain's got to back away here, being dropped to just 200 HP.
Onibeed's about to throw up a Waldo for a disengage. Over the top is coming Litz though. Oh my goodness, from up on high. Attempts to get the stun from the top rope. Divine Barrier has to be dropped there as Kudzu. Bomb is also deployed to make it harder to pursue that Ivy. Litz doesn't really get the way they're looking for there. And now behind this heavy barrage, Mydong try to take the turret, but Together with a big power slash connection on Tvik straight away. Here's that combustion used from Waldo, who's got 6k on them already. Crew is going to fall. And now we're going to head over to Captain, who is simply trying to get out of the eye of the storm. Pojilaya Skumbriya still want to try and push that Guardian down and get that flex slot. Onibeed is hiding, waiting probably on a healing turret cooldown. Doesn't want to reveal himself.
Well, the unfortunate part there, Mitch, was that Mydong had the man advantage as well. They still lost the fight, and they had also 2 players from PS pushing in the solo lane to do some damage. So this is like really the worst case scenario for them to not win that fight and to lose some objective control around the map. You see them try to salvage that by sending some players over to the 1 lane to deal with it, but we did see Sunset escape in time. So, I don't know. Mydong are going to be in a tough spot because they don't have a flex spot. Their enemies do. And we see Tvik getting caught under the turret.
Able to keep himself here, but still this is going to get a little bit hectic. Tvik trying to get away. They really wanted this Guardian in the 4 lane. Tvik just able to escape, though. Was stunned up briefly, but is able to get a little bit of air on that jump in goo ball form. However, Pojilaya Skumbriya aren't backing off this 4 lane. Now they're going to move in with 4 players. Airdrop even active here for Litz, as they were really hoping for a full engagement, but by the looks of things, it's going to be Pojilaya Skumbriya looking for a walker there or some good lane pressure.
Jeez, how much damage is Litz doing? He almost takes down Captain by himself. We did see a contest over at the buffs that just spawned, which Captain did manage to grab, but he's still going to die either way, so he's not going to escape with this one. Very unfortunate, as I believe Mydong on the left-hand side of the map was able to pick that up as well. But Urns, Mitch, this is what, for me, I'm going to be heavily focused on now in this match, is who can be successful taking these Urns. It's so many souls for your team, not to mention the ability points you get. It's a big turning point, and speaking of turning point, Sunset might be caught out here.
Martin wants to push towards him here. Life Drain, of course, at the ready. Has to respect what the 7 can do, though, especially in terms of their zoning potential. At this point, Martin might be hoping for a soul exchange, but no opportunity to make use of that. This is messy. Cube has to be used by Vic here. He's still healthy enough now. Zania really wants to try and draw a bead on the position of that Viscous. Heads upstairs all too easily. The Lash's mobility unrivaled. And oh, buddy, that's 2 kills going to the 7, who's at 11k.
9k gold, or sorry, 9k soul difference here, as we're going to see the Urn ran to the right-hand side of the map as well. Are we going to see Mydong contest this? The thing is, it's a very tricky point. You don't want them to turn it in for free, but at the same time, if Mydong get in a fight right now against PS and lose this fight, I feel like they're going to continue to start to lose more and more and more around the map here, because again, they actually were able to get, 3 of the Guardians, so they have their own flex enabled. But this could be a big turning point in the game, either for Mydong, if they can win it, or for PS, if they can.
Frankly, Mydong don't quite have the souls to even really need the flex slot. I think just about now is sort of a fine timing for them where they are, but Mydong do seem like they at least want a posture for a fight. Ooh, if not, like really take one. Here's the Google.
If he hits him with it, it's going to drop the Urn, but he gets the Urn turn in.
Oh, that's not good timing. Here comes a Hairy Barrage from the top of a rooftop, and upstairs goes Zania. He's looking to take them again. It's on 1 versus 1. In the meantime, down there, you got a time wall. And yeah, this is not really what you want to be as beginners, but you get what you ask for, Only. Gonna be able to back away, but has to leave the safe haven of the healing turret. Not that it was particularly safe in that case. Pojilaya Skumbriya here really would have loved to have pushed up, but together did get caught out. And Marvin doesn't look like they want to give too much ground. But a lot of that poke coming in from the splatter here is going to give Mydong at least a little bit of position to play from. Big damage taken by Captain, though. Divine Barrier has to be used to get him out.
I kind of like that, though, because they were able to disengage off of that fight with a kill advantage onto Together. Then they rotated towards the 2 lane to look for another one, and they're able to pick up another kill this time onto Zania. So all in all, not the worst case for them. Obviously, letting the soul turn in, or the Urn turn in, go for free is very unfortunate, but they still picked up 2 kills off the back of this. And with the positions they're currently in, I mean, maybe Waldo can get caught off guard here, as we do see Sunset. And of course, you have Hardeki there to look for the chase. I am a little bit worried, though, for Mydong here to, I don't know, not get caught out here. They can't really afford to lose too many more deaths for really nothing in return. It's going to be a tough comeback, and I feel like comebacks in this game are very difficult to pull off because it's very objective oriented. You have to either be able to defend your walkers properly, or your guardians, obviously, or defend the Urns. That, again, if you make one mistake, then you can completely be run over by the other team.
Talk a little bit about items while we have a chance here. Decay actually gets picked up here by Taz. So this might be a concession to the sort of spirit lifesteal that Waldo has, or maybe even what Geist can do in that case. But you did mention, of course, how much damage Litz was doing. Yeah, they've invested in some of those damage items. We'll get to that in just a second. Waldo gets absolutely blown to smithereens there by Fate. And that's a raw burst that you can be offered. I don't even think there was a... I guess Fate could have used ultimate and had it reset there. But yeah, that slash, that's that Shiv. Very dangerous.
Yeah, Shiv. I mean, especially if you're very smart about how you play, which of course these guys are going to be, right? Got to build up that reach meter before you go for any of these engagements for the extra damage off your dash. Of course, the ricochet off your knives. And PS, honestly, with, like, we can see just in tier 3 items alone, a big difference between these 2 teams, and a 10k soul difference between the 2 teams. But I'm curious again, like, where's this farm going to be mostly focused on here? We do have, is it Onibi off in the 4 lane?
They picked up Surge of Power here, so they likely have put the movement speed buff on their wall to make it even easier to catch people out, since you don't want to step away from the team. A lot of slowing hex here. Look at all the actives that Vic is holding on to. Definitely very supportive. Got return fire and of course that warp stone, so it can really be wherever he needs to. I think I saw Litz even pick up a headshot booster, so that's something to talk about in a second. But here's the swap straight through the time wall now. Looking to try and back away. Kutsu Bomb as well. A little bit of a nuisance here for Mydong to deal with if they were to step into it. No catch for PS here.
Yeah, good disengage. I think that was Tvik he caught, right, on the Viscous with the paradoxical swap. So he was able to get away with the help of that workman, like you mentioned before. And they might be able to turn this into a fight for themselves together, almost getting caught out here. I mean, you can see the way Mydong are playing. They're looking for those picks. They're not afraid to look for those picks, but they also have to be very aware of PS looking for, obviously, the same, almost catching out Tvik before.
I'll see a decent soul lead here. I think what was more concerning is just how far Captain was behind. I think he was about 8k to everyone else's 12. So we've seen Mydong be able to catch the Warden up a little bit more, which is going to be important. I don't think they even had Majestic Leap last time we checked in. So a few of those tier 3s are still coming in. Like we mentioned before, Onabi has that surge of power. Really do want to try and use this beginners to catch people out, as that wall, when skilled into, can even stun. See that cancelled out there. No catch hit for Onabi.
I'm looking more towards Sunset, because if you look at like where the farms allotted between both these two teams individually, Sunset has the majority of their farm at 17k, whereas Mydong's side, you do have Waldo at 14k, but it's a lot closer between him and like Muffin and even Crew here, as the buffs have come back up here, and they are going to be secured, I think 1-1 if I'm not mistaken. And even the urn going to come back again. This is going to be probably the next fight's going to be kicking off, is exactly at this urn or in the turn-in.
I mean, if you are Pojilaya Skumbriya and you have that soul lead, you do want to try and get a fight forced. This is the best way to do it. Now, Mydong have to get involved, otherwise they risk letting that lead grow even further out of their control. So away we go. Taz looking to get this one turned in already. Mydong are grouping up around there. All of their ultimates are available. Concussive Combustion, crucially, going to be available for Waldo. Last stand there for Captain, so this will be an all-in. Crew TPing in right now, straight into the fight. This could be a little bit ugly. Fate quite happy to hang around here. It's impossible to burst a Shiv down because of that bloodletting. Onabi going low, tries to pop that barrage, but in the way, of course, will be the time wall. Stun attempted there for Litz. Gonna be a 1-for-1. McGinnis does eventually fall though. Sinia getting run into by Muffin now, who's looking pretty dangerous. Will use that soul exchange though, but the damage is very, very good onto the lash. And they'll be able to chase him down. 2-for-1 favoring Mydong here. However, the owner's on the other side of the map.
The urn is being used.
Yeah, not much longer as it does get turned in. So that's 2 for 2 for PS here. And Mydong, I mean, that fight they just took, they were at a man disadvantage, and they still went for the engagement off the back of that urn turn in though, knowing people out of position. They're going to go for a push onto this Walker, but the Walker's really not going to net them too much in the end if they can get it. They can get out with their lives, more importantly, as Litz goes in.
Good hit for Litz though. That Stone Idol able to stun up Martin for a time. Has another paradoxical swap, and yep, the damage from Captain going through that time wall was enough to end them. Tvik also going down. We saw Pojilaya Skumbriya get to literally go and turn the urn in and come back to the fight that they technically lost, then evening it out, winning it out, and now having respawn timers come up as soon as they want to hit mid-boss. This has worked out perfectly for them.
If you're Onabi here, I know you want to go in to steal this, but you're not going to have the opportunity because Together's just going to pop his ultimate. He can't be stunned. Or maybe they're going to chase you down. They know the wall's on cooldown, and this is going to be their Rejuvenator definitely going over to PS, locking this one in. And I think Onabi's going to fall for this as well here, trying to escape with that 300 HP, but it's so hard to escape a Yamato. It's so hard to escape everyone coming around you as well on the enemy side. And, well, unfortunately, he will fall, leaving Mydong down a player now as PS looks to potentially push off the back.
It's a nice Alchemical Flask hit there for Captain, but they do not have their ultimate available. And of course, they're playing against a team with Rejuvenator. Now, bear in mind, much like other games you may have played, not only does Rejuvenator give you the advantage to respawn much quicker, it also buffs your minions across the map. And these lanes are already pushing very heavily in favor of Pojilaya Skumbriya. Now you can see this Walker's starting to be tested. Mydong still have 3 of them up right now, but that is about to change, no doubt about it.
A little bit worried. I know ZP's going to come in here later on and talk about the Warden, but we'll get to that in a second. Actually, we do see Tvik go in. They're trying to force the fight here, trying to force the last stand potentially, and he gets a lot of stuns off. The problem is the damage isn't really there for them at the moment.
I got the Shadow Transformation out of Together at the very least here. Muffin, though, has gone very, very low. This is dangerous. Pojilaya Skumbriya really posturing out in front. Onabi goes down. Crew elsewhere is able to get a Guardian and can TP back in, but there's just no time. Tvik burst down far too quickly, and that Mirage probably needs to get back and find some way to help. Mydong now losing Waldo. Things are going from bad to worse. Space Guardians now going to be falling as Pojilaya Skumbriya have built a decent soul lead and still are looking to get maximum value out of this Rejuvenator. Base Guardians getting hammered.
Yeah, they're coming back in. Problem is Captain's kind of far behind to really do much damage with this last stand. And we do see them still just taking kill after kill here. They're finally able to get Zania down. The problem is Crew's the last one remaining. And honestly, with the respawn timers coming through as well, with them going to be staggered, we might actually just see the finish here.
Yeah, Crew TP'd in, Jason, but it was just a little bit too late to do much of anything here. Onabi nicely done though. Big, heavy barrage coming out of spawn. Onabi, bear in mind, is you know, investing in some of those heavier hitting items statistically. So, of course, the knee will fall. Taz also going down. This is a good recovery here from Mydong, as Pojilaya Skumbriya may have overstayed their welcome.
Yeah, obviously they're going to respawn back in really quickly, like you mentioned before, right? The 50% reduction on the respawn timers. But the upside for Mydong is that's a lot of souls going back their way because they get those kills. And more importantly, since the lanes are pushing against them, they can clean up a lot of farm. The only question I have in mind, though, is how much of the jungle are they going to be able to secure, as you can already see on the mini-map, and trying to heavily invest into these to make sure that they lock these in, as we do see, you know, obviously PS going back to their own base to do so. But we also didn't see PS even buy off the back of picking up that Rejuvenator, so they're going to come back even stronger, still sitting on a 12k soul lead.
Good escalating exposure picked up by Hardeki. That's going to be pretty dangerous in those longer fights, which is where Shiv really excels. Time all going to be thrown up here by Taz and looking to back away as we have a burst of activity from Mydong. Waldo here getting cubed up. Pressure coming down. Onobi going to throw a wall up to disengage, and the Infernus is able to walk away. The Infernus, by the way, who is starting to get pretty scary. That's a Titanic magazine picked up for them at tier 3, of course. So they're getting along in terms of their build now at 21k souls. Mydong still have an element of danger about them.
Not to mention, they just picked up both buffs as well. I believe Crew got on the left-hand side, and we saw Tvik here get on the right-hand side. I believe he got movement, if I'm not mistaken.
That movement buff is so fun. Yeah.
I mean, with this goo ball as well, it's going to be actually really nice. The problem is they can't afford to get caught.
Waldo, he did exactly that. Together's able to catch them out somehow. Now Yamato, absolutely terrifying. Notice they've also got their rejuvenating trinket there as well. We'll get to that though. Fate able to pick off Marfin. Yeah, I mean, so fed right now is Hardeki rather. Why we under a different name here. Oh yeah, with these longer fights, right? I mean, I think this Shiv is absolutely terrifying, and Mydong now might have lost their grip on this.
Yeah, I don't know what Mydong can really do to get back into this one because they kind of have too many of their players far behind. I mean, Crew's on 25k. He's the most fed player on his team. The problem is he doesn't have a frontline to help deal with anything, or if he doesn't have a team at all to help deal with anything like this, then that 25k is going to amount to nothing.
Yeah, this one's going to be over in a couple of moments, folks. I just want to set your expectations. Mydong, 4 players down now, and that last shrine is about to be picked off. They had an opportunity. I thought their defense was good for Mydong. They forced out the rejuvenators from a number of the Pojilaya Skumbriya players, but again, you know, we aren't even starting to talk about how fed 7 is at this point of the game. Hardeki's finding so many solo kills. Even together at 22k souls, he's still more than enough to blow any individual on Mydong to smithereens if they put a foot out of line.
They're going to have Captain come back in, Majestic Leap, and maybe the last stand will be enough to hold them back. But honestly, he's just going to be bursted before that can really do much damage. Here we go. We have 4 players left alive. Waldo going to be coming back in. The wall going to be thrown as well to help separate them. The problem is no one's really in the pit, and they're all in the pit generally towards the same side.
Oh yeah, they're just going for this now. Concussive combustion used inside the pit by Waldo, hoping to try and get as big a stun as possible. But Captain and Marfin are already down, and Onibi is also going to get eliminated. Scary stuff. Waldo in the mix, and of course, pretty well built. But no one in Pojilaya Skumbriya really bothered. Hardeki, of course, takes a fair bit of damage. Eventually has to succumb. But his patron is done, and Pojilaya Skumbriya will be advancing for another crack at the buff enjoyers.
Yeah, another chance to get back into this, potentially take them down, be the first team actually to dethrone our champion, whether it's EU or NA. At ZP, I was talking about you during the game. One thing I wanted to point out was Captain on the Warden. He fell behind early, and we know what Warden can't do when he falls behind early is really have a ton of impact later on in the game.
No, I mean, he was starving. That was the most just starving, like, at the food banks, like, please give me anything, Warden, I've seen in a while. I think the apex of that was in the middle of the game where you see an Ivy at 10k, Warden at 6k at the moment, and Ivy nearly just one-taps Warden in one clip just by going over and contesting buff. It was struggle city for Captain, fortunately, and that's kind of one of the downsides is when you do a Warden comp is that you really have to do everything possible to try and, you know, make sure you at least stay even. But that was very difficult with how mobile how mobile PS was playing, because PS was just utilizing their early to mid game really well to continually make rotations, keep lane pressure up. And I mean, heck, you talk about lane pressure, even the McGinnis Warden lane fell behind early against the Paradox Ivy lane. So it kind of started out without farm, and then the rotations that came after made it so difficult for Mydong to get out of the hole they found themselves in.
Guys, let's quickly discuss our player of the match here today, presented by Triumph.gg. Plenty of candidates on the side of Pojilaya Skumbriya, because in a matchup like this, it's pretty easy to shine, I think. We'll get that up for you in just a moment. It's going to be Litz on the Ivy, who we kind of touched on at the start of the game. We're like, well, watch out, guys. Ivy's a bit of a rough laner, but I tell you what, we really saw this Ivy take over. I saw an early headshot booster picked up that probably ended up being a headhunter. The Ivy, like any support in this game, Jason, could really get out of hand if there's, a bunch of souls that just find their way into the pockets. We constantly saw airdrops followed up by stone forms, like from the literal top rope. Litz is coming in and securing these big stuns a number of times on Muffin as well. Crucially, stunning up that lady guy, so important because she's so cooldown dependent.
I think what's really important, by the way that Litz played Ivy in particular as well, is the impact he had in like early to mid game and in mid game, right? Because he was being involved in these other lanes, he was able to help keep his farm up, not to mention really help out the other laners. We saw, Together really struggle in the one-on-one initially against Waldo. We even saw Boffin just destroying Zania in the 4 lane. But because of the impact, because of his rotations, I think he was able to really help snowball this and prevent Mydong from really getting rolling.
Yeah, that's the point I was going to get to, is that, you talk about Paradox and Lash as your roaming threats. There's actually a quieter game for Xenia, who I do think is one of the bigger impact players on this PS squad. But, yeah, I mean, Litz added even more pressure on the Ivy. You saw it in that clip versus Warden, but also just, in general, mobile enough to continually create mismatches. Also, while it was a close call on player of the match, Hardeki, not the flashiest game of Shiv, but got ahead, where the name in game is Fate, but it is in fact Hardeki. We confirmed. Here's the problem when you're playing a Steam game, right? Players will change their name for no reason whatsoever. So we'll try and crack down on the teams a little bit and be like, hey, when you play in the tournament, can you at least use your normal player name? So Hardeki will be swapping the name to Hardeki for the next one. But also, very good game from him. Like I said, it made player of the match a little bit hard to look at because it wasn't the flashiest game of Shiv. We didn't have Shiv on camera a lot, but you took a look at the soul generation that was going on and just the presence in fights. It was clear that there is an enormous benefit there. And on top of the fact that previously, when PS has done well, it's been because a lot of the time Xenia and Hardeki just have incredible personal performances. So, yeah, no surprises.
Can I jump in here really quickly, actually? Can we go back to that really fast? Because there's something I wanted to point out. Thank you so much, production.
This guy.
Look at Onibi's healing on McGinnis compared to Litz's healing on the Ivy. I'm not used, and I'm not trying to call him out in particular, but I'm not used to seeing a McGinnis have this low of healing when kind of that's one of your like sustaining factors in these fights. However, I will say this. It's very hard to heal teammates who are dead because you got run over by the enemy team, right? So also, it's kind of like a little bit of A, a little bit of column A, a little bit of column B here. Because we did see him like farming solo lanes, which obviously you need to get some items going, but we didn't really see Mydong play around the healing that Onibi could do on a McGinnis.
I mean, it's also worth pointing out as well is like the bullet lifesteal that you get, right? The bullet lifesteal from Watcher's Covenant on Ivy scales on Spirit, but obviously it also scales on gun damage. And when you've got a fully maxed, like the tethers, I think you can tether to 2 other people as opposed to just the 1. So in these like all-in team fights, if Litz gets ahead, if they're doing damage and your team's doing damage, then you heal more because Ivy's healing is based on that bullet lifesteal and not necessarily, and like a percentage of that is also replicated to everybody else connected. So it can really kind of get out of control. That's why we saw some of these items that were looking to try and reduce this sort of healing. We saw that picked up by Pojilaya Skumbriya, but I digress. They have advanced to take on Buff Enjoyers in our best of 3 final here in the Deadlock Fight Night EU. Mydong, honestly, great showing. Really thought they showed us a lot in the game. The game's very snowbally right now. Even quality teams, they lose out in that mid game. It can be over pretty quickly. So we, of course, are going to be back after a quick break and heading into our best of 3 final. Pojilaya Skumbriya going up against Buff Enjoyers here at Deadlock Fight Night number 3 for EU, presented by Triumph.gg, the easiest way to make money playing video games. We'll see you after this.